Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of Our Own Volition, the official podcast of Volition Comics. I'm your host, Peyton Williams, and to our new listeners, I say welcome aboard the Volition Comics train. To our returning listeners, you may have noticed I didn't upload last week, but I hope this episode has been well worth the wait, especially since last week we made a game-changing announcement for the future of our company. Ramping up for that has required all hands on deck, from me focusing on making short-form content for our other social media platforms, in aid in preparing a bunch of art for, drumroll please, the Supernova Five. It's so good to finally say that out loud, instead of having to be sneaky and vague about it. The Supernova Five. I've teased it quite a bit over the past few episodes, and couldn't wait to finally just come out and say it with my chest. I felt like I was practically about to burst at the seams. The Supernova Five. Coming September 25th. Now, that date I didn't just pull out of nowhere. It has a special significance. I've always been a huge Superman fan, from childhood up, ever since I can remember. Just about any incarnation of the character, from the comics, to the movies, and to television, live action, and animation, I love. You should see my collection at home. Not just DVDs and Blu-rays, but also VHS tapes. Heck, Smallville is my favorite show to this day. But no actor, no matter how valiant their effort, can top the GOAT, Christopher Reeve. The earnestness with which he portrayed the character, that sincerity, the charm he brought to the role, the humility, the warmth, the safety, the vulnerability, that this was a god among men who just wanted to be a friend, who just wanted to love others like the Kansas farmers that raised him, taught him. That costume, considered ridiculous, the subject matter considered silly, he pulled it off in a serious and believable way for the first time. Not to discredit how fun previous incarnations, like the serials in the show, were, and I have those in my collection as well, but this, my friends, was the first major superhero blockbuster of its type. Not without its own camp, sure, but moving beyond camp. Not without its own slapstick from time to time, sure, but moving beyond slapstick. This was a serious story taken seriously and portrayed seriously. To that end, plus the revolutionary special effects at the time, which in my opinion still hold up to this day. You really believed that a man can fly. Now, back to September 25th. That's his birthday. September 25th is Christopher Reeve's birthday. He would have been 73 this year. Now, he wasn't just Superman on camera, the best to date, the absolute gold standard that I don't believe can or will ever be topped. He was also Superman behind the camera in real life, an absolute angel of a human being. He was active, adventurous, and humble through it all, being put to the test when in 1995 he suffered a horse riding accident that paralyzed him from the neck down, rendering him a quadriplegic for the rest of his life. He fought his way back from a depression so deep, so debilitating, he didn't want to go on anymore. He became a real-life Superman when he founded the Christopher Reeve Foundation, devoting himself to paralysis research and disability advocacy. His light shone through his personal tragedy, in turn lifting up others. It doesn't get more quintessentially Clark Kent than that. The tribute goes beyond releasing the project on his birthday. There's a character in it, Howie Garnett, famous Hollywood actor who portrayed a superhero in 5 blockbusters, injured in a racing accident that left him a paraplegic, and started a disability advocacy and research foundation, the Howie Garnett Foundation, that is directly based on Reeve's story. He is the one who brings the Supernova Five together. The Supernova Five. Man, oh man, its very earliest beginnings go as far back as me being 11 years old, growing up in Germany at the time and drawing comic books barely better than stick figures. It began with Superboy, Superjunge in German, who is as direct of a ripoff, a blatant copy as you can get. he was accompanied by Astro Boy, or Astrojunge, who hailed from the planet Konospolis and called the earthly Navajo City his home. The two of them would be accompanied by a few other heroes such as Captain Impossible, Power Boy, X-Boy, and others, a team that I called the Supernova. I eventually made custom LEGO minifigures and began smashing them together, recording those sessions and packaging it as a show that I called Extreme Supernova. Extreme being spelled with just an X at the beginning, not EX. I made 2 seasons and even burned them as DVDs. Shortly thereafter, the project took a hiatus, and I didn't dust it off again until 2018. I had just published my very first iteration of The Keepers, years before Peyton came on board and Volition Comics was even a thought. I revisited the Supernova, but with a twist. See, the heroes were all really underdeveloped. They were either Superman ripoffs, empty vessels, or both. I completely scrapped those and started anew. Enter Elijah Wright, Brooke Knight, Ana Jimenez, Michael Wilson, and Xiao Nguyen. Elijah has cerebral palsy. Brooke is autistic. Ana has Down syndrome. Michael has albinism. And Xiao has epilepsy. I decided to showcase a perspective that we rarely see in comic books, superhero media: disabilities and neurodivergence. I decided to take the premise further and introduce a sinister eugenics plot pushed by forces in the American government. Elijah, Brooke, Ana, Michael, and Xiao's initial hero monikers were Astro, Lantern, Gold Star, Captain Astounding, and X-Girl, respectively, which I have since scrapped and decided to simply refer to them by name. Enter the villains. As I said, the heroes I had to completely restart with, but I was able to keep so much of the villains. Dr. John was a bald billionaire, not unlike Lex Luthor, who I turned into Maddox Johns. A MAGA-like congressman hell-bent on, at best, curing, in quotes, those with disabilities, or, at worst, exterminating them. This is something that, after all, has happened before in history. As much as we talk about the Jews, Roma, political dissidents, homosexuals, and others, we need to talk more about the mentally ill and or disabled who were either forcibly sterilized or systematically murdered in the Holocaust. Hundreds of thousands of them. History is doomed to repeat itself when we don't talk about it, educate about it, and make sure certain safeguards are in place that they never happen again. In fact, we are now witnessing a genocide in broad daylight, on color television, on our screens every day. In Gaza, the stories will never cease to be relevant, will never cease needing to be told. The project was slated to come out in 2022 after Aiden made his first cover art for it, but I wasn't ready to release it. I kept delaying it. Well, now the time is as ripe as any. As far as the other villains, I had a mad scientist, a male by the name of Dr. Gold, who I gender swapped into the female Dr. Genevieve Gold. I had a cyborg and a humanoid octopus as well, now named Terrence Jeffers and Jeremy Beauregard, who I was also able to somehow fit into my narrative. I gave them all proper backstories, motivations, and identities, which they lacked in the first ever comic strips in LEGO episodes. There are a few other details I reworked to more closely walk in the footsteps of what I began when I was 11 or so. Jaime Garnett's character in the movies was named Astral, and he hailed from the planet Konospolis. And Navajo City was transformed into an acronym, which I won't spell out quite yet on this podcast, a science project of Garnett's. All in all, so much has changed, but so much has stayed the same. It's actually incredible to think how faithful, despite the plot overhaul and fresh protagonists, the project is to its very earliest days. But yes, this is why the podcast took a hiatus, and the time was ripe at the peak of Disability Pride Month to start teasing the cast of characters, who, by the way, I did my absolute best to portray in a way that is faithful, accurate, and respectful to the communities they represent. As a writer tackling this subject matter, you have to make for damn sure that your characterizations don't stoop to the level of caricature or stereotype. This, by the way, can happen on accident too, no matter how good your intentions or how well you think you researched. This is why caution is so important. Also, many of these experiences aren't universal either. There are different takes, different perspectives, different expressions of how these disabilities or how neurodivergence influence and shape a person's life. After all, everyone's a human being, full stop, at the end of the day, so that's your starting point. That's not something you're working towards, but something you're working from. I'll say, it does help that for a few of these disabilities, I had real life examples of people who helped me to portray their experiences accurately. The rest, and heck, even filling in the blanks of where I did have those examples, research was absolutely key. In the meantime, while you all wait, issue 1 of the Wingspan comic adaptation is out on Webtoon, and so is the entire first volume of Aiden's Kawaii Zombie. Volume 1 of The Keepers is available on Smashwords, Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble, and other vendors as an ebook. Thank you for supporting this podcast, even if it's as simple as hitting the like button, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing a link to a friend. Many exciting things are happening at Volition Comics, and please don't forget to mark your calendars for September 25th, when the world will finally get ready to meet the Supernova Five and hear their stories from their own mouths. Thank you to our returning listeners. Thank you for those newcomers who stuck around until the very end, and I hope we'll see you next time. This is Peyton signing off, and I'll see you guys next week.